They were both sent from beyond the world, clothed as old men, yet bearing the wisdom of ages. Saruman the White and Gandalf the Grey, the greatest of the 5 Istari. They were not warriors, but guides, not rulers, but counselors. Yet even among the wise there was ambition. Saruman was proud of his knowledge. Gandalf was humble in his purpose. One sought order through control, the other believed in hope and freedom. As the darkness of Sauron grew, these two stood at the center of the storm, but something cracked between them. Friends became rivals, and one would fall so far that not even his soul could be redeemed. When Gandalf came to Isengard, he didn't expect a trap. He expected wisdom, a sharing of fears, a plan against the rising dark. But Saruman had changed. He walked the tower of Orthanc as if it were a throne. He spoke softly, but every word dripped with malice. "A new power is rising," Saruman said. "Against it the old allies and policies will not avail us at all. There is no hope left in elves or dying Numenor." "Join with me, Gandalf," the White Wizard proposed. "When did Saruman the Wise abandon reason for madness?" Gandalf replied. But Saruman did not laugh. He wanted the ring, and he wanted a partner, not in peace, but in domination. And when Gandalf refused, Saruman locked him away, a prisoner in a high place where even hope felt small. How did this happen? How did the head of the White Council become a servant of the Eye? It wasn't sudden. It began with pride. Then came fear. Then the palantír, the seeing stone that let Sauron whisper into his thoughts. But even before that, there were signs. Saruman studied the rings of power too closely. He kept secrets. He believed that only great power could defeat power. But was he truly corrupted? Or did he believe he was saving Middle-earth in his own way? That's where the story begins, not with betrayal, but with a choice. A slow fall masked as wisdom. The Istari were powerful Maya spirits sent by the Valar to Middle-earth. Their mission was not to dominate, but to inspire resistance to Sauron's rise. Among the 5 Istari who arrived, Saruman was the first. Known in Valinor as Curumo or Curunir, he wore white, the color of leadership and purity. He was esteemed as the chief of the Istari, chosen for his deep knowledge and craftsmanship, serving the Vala Aule. Gandalf arrived later. In Valinor, he was called Olorin, the wisest of the Maya. But in Middle-earth, he took the humble form of an old man clad in grey. Gandalf landed at Mithlond, where the elf lord Círdan sensed his spirit. Tolkien writes that Círdan considered him the greatest spirit and the wisest, and thus entrusted to him Narya, the Ring of Fire. Though the ring granted Gandalf strength to inspire others, Saruman harbored quiet resentment. He coveted the ring's bearer's influence, feeling overshadowed despite his status. This origin set the stage. While Saruman led the Istari, Gandalf served. One was chief, commanding and scholarly. The other a counselor, quiet but wise. Both were meant to guide, not rule. But beneath the white and grey cloaks lay seeds of conflict. Ambition hidden by purpose, jealousy cloaked in duty. In the year 2463 of the Third Age, the White Council was formed in response to the growing power of the Shadow in the fortress of Dol Guldur. It was a gathering of the wise, Elrond, Galadriel, Círdan and the wizards. The chief purpose of the council was clear, to stand against the necromancer. Galadriel saw greatness in Gandalf. She wished that Mithrandir should be the head of the council, believing in his wisdom. But Gandalf refused the leadership, always shunning authority, and Saruman was instead appointed. The law says, and Curunir, that was Saruman the White, was chosen to be their chief, for he had most studied the devices of Sauron of old. Galadriel indeed had wished that Mithrandir should be the lead of the council, and Saruman begrudged them that, for his pride and desire of mastery was grown great. But Mithrandir refused the office, since he would have no ties and no allegiance, save to those who sent him, and he would abide in no place nor be subject to any summons. But Saruman now began to study the lore of the Rings of Power, their making and their history. Yet even then, there were quiet doubts. Saruman loved knowledge too much, and power even more. Gandalf sensed this pride, though he spoke nothing of it at the time. Gandalf, ever watchful, suspected that the power in Dol Guldur was more than just a nameless evil. Long before the White Council took any action, he journeyed in secret to the fortress. As Tolkien writes in The Quest of Erebor, Gandalf had gone alone to Dol Guldur, and there discovered the truth. The necromancer was indeed Sauron returned, but when he brought this warning to the council, Saruman dismissed it. At the time, he claimed that the One Ring had long ago passed into the sea. Into Anduin it fell, and long ago, I deem, it was rolled to the sea, he said, trying to divert attention away from the ring's possible return. What Gandalf did not know was that Saruman had already begun studying the Rings of Power for his own gain. He delved too deep, not merely for knowledge, but for mastery. He read of the forging of the One Ring and its corrupting allure. Even as he outwardly stood with the council, he was quietly searching for the ring himself. He found means to spy upon Gandalf, and he watched and waited, Tolkien writes in Unfinished Tales. At that time, Gandalf still trusted him. He saw Saruman as proud, yes, but wise. He never imagined that his ally was already walking a dangerous path, a path from which there would be no return. Even after the betrayal at Orthanc and the imprisonment of Gandalf, Saruman still tried to manipulate with words. His greatest weapon was not his staff, but his voice. In The Two Towers, Tolkien writes, "Then Saruman laughed. 'So you have come to storm the tower?' His voice was low and melodious, its very sound an enchantment. It was a delight to hear the voice speaking. All that it said seemed wise and reasonable. This was the voice of Saruman, the power he used to dominate, to convince, to sow doubt. When Saruman addressed the gathered company outside Orthanc, even the most skeptical felt tempted. Tolkien writes, "Those who listened unwarily to that voice could seldom report the words that they heard, and if they did, they wondered why they had been so moved." And when he turned to Mithrandir, he said, "Will you not come up, Gandalf? It would be wise, Gandalf. The friendship of Saruman and the power of Orthanc cannot be lightly thrown aside." But Gandalf had changed. No longer the grey, he had returned as the white, now Saruman's equal, and his better. That moment was the breaking point. Saruman's words, once trusted, now rang hollow. His voice could sway others, but it no longer held Gandalf. What remained between them was no longer trust. Saruman's fall was not just about pride, it was about what he came to believe. In Isengard, he turned away from the wisdom of the West and embraced the tools of the enemy. Smoke rose from his forges, and machines groaned in the pits beneath the tower. He even raised armies of Uruk-hai, creatures twisted into brutal instruments of war, and began plotting to seize the One Ring for himself. Gandalf, meanwhile, stayed true to his purpose. He did not seek to rule or to conquer. He inspired others to resist, to lead themselves. As Tolkien wrote of him, "He that breaks a thing to find out what it is, has left the path of wisdom." Gandalf understood that power gained through force would only bring ruin. Saruman reached for control. Gandalf walked the harder road of faith. And now the white no longer meant the same thing. In his hunger for power, Saruman turned to the palantír of Orthanc. Once a gift of the Númenóreans, the Seeing Stones were meant for wisdom, but the stone connected to another still in Sauron's grasp, the Ithil Stone. Through it, the Dark Lord could deceive, mislead, and dominate. As Tolkien writes in Unfinished Tales, he was ensnared by the device he used. Through it, the will of Sauron entered into Saruman's mind. He believed he could wrest secrets from the enemy and use them against him, but instead, he became bent under the weight of that will. What began as secret study became willful concealment. Saruman no longer shared all with the White Council. He withheld knowledge of the ring, of Sauron's movements. Gandalf, ever watchful, began to suspect. He sensed pride in Saruman's words, and a coldness in his intentions. But even he did not know how far his old friend had fallen. Yet, when the War of the Ring began to stir, Gandalf rode to Isengard seeking the White's counsel. He had already sent Frodo out of the Shire with the One Ring, hidden and protected, but he had not yet realized just how far Saruman had fallen. In the Fellowship of the Ring, Gandalf recounts, "I rode to the foot of Orthanc and came to Saruman, and there he met me, and led me up to his high chamber. He wore a ring on his finger. To Gandalf's shock, the wizard declared, "I am Saruman the Wise, Saruman Ringmaker, Saruman of many colors." Gandalf was stunned. I looked then and saw that his robes, which had seemed white, were not so, but were woven of all colors, and I liked them not. Saruman's outward change mirrored his inner corruption. He mocked the white as a beginning and sought something greater, domination. When Gandalf revealed that the ring was found and that he had sent Frodo on a mission to destroy it, Saruman's interest sharpened. He saw an opportunity. "Why not?" he said. "The ruling ring? If we could command that, then the power would pass to us." Gandalf answered coldly, "Only one hand at a time can wield the one, and you know that well." It was then Gandalf knew Saruman had abandoned his purpose. He no longer sought to defeat Sauron, he wished to replace him. After rejecting Gandalf's warning, Saruman held him captive atop the pinnacle of Orthanc. The Grey Wizard later recalled, "He wore me out with words, and in the end he told me plainly that he was now for Sauron, and that I must join with him or perish. I refused. He lifted up his staff and pointed to the high roof of the tower. For many days, Gandalf remained trapped, watching the land below change beneath the wheels of Saruman's ambition. Isengard, once a green and ringed valley filled with trees, was now a scar upon the land. Saruman dug great pits, built dark furnaces, and bred evil armies. The clear waters of the River Isen ran black. The tower that once stood as a symbol of learning and peace now echoed with the sounds of forges and marching feet. Saruman, in his desire to rival Sauron, had traded the beauty of nature for the stench of industry. Wisdom had become calculation, knowledge a weapon, and the old world of the West began to die in smoke and steel. Gandalf's captivity came to an end when Gwaihir the Windlord found him stranded and lifted him from the pinnacle. Swiftly he flew, bearing me far away, until I was beyond the reach of Saruman, Gandalf said in the Fellowship of the Ring. From there, Gandalf rode from Rohan to inform Elrond and the other wise of what had transpired. "Saruman has fallen," he told them. "He is plotting to find the One Ring before Sauron." The White Council, once led by the White Wizard, could no longer trust its head. At the Council of Elrond, Gandalf openly declared Saruman's treachery. He will serve only himself, becoming a rival to Sauron. He has plotted to find the ring and seize it for his own. In that same council, Gandalf pledged himself to Frodo's task. "I will help you bear this burden, as long as it is yours to bear." And he did. As the Fellowship began their journey, it was Gandalf who led them through Moria, warned them of dangers, and made every effort to shield Frodo from despair. Even as Saruman built armies in the west, Gandalf upheld the fading light of the east. Gandalf did not waver. He led the Fellowship from Rivendell with resolve, guiding them through shadow. At the pass of Caradhras, when the Fellowship attempted to cross the mountain, it was Saruman's power that turned the weather against them. Gandalf said, "There are many powers in the world, for good or for evil, and some are greater than I am. Against some I have not yet been measured." The booming voice in the wind was Saruman's, seeking to stop them even from afar. But the wizard resisted, using his own strength to push back the storm long enough to keep the Fellowship alive. When the mountain path failed, Gandalf led them into Moria, the ancient dwarven kingdom now fallen into darkness. In the chamber of Balin's tomb, the Fellowship was attacked by goblins and trolls. Gandalf held the rear, driving off the threat with light and fire. But in the depths of Khazad-dûm, a greater foe stirred, the Balrog of Morgoth. On the bridge, Gandalf turned to face it alone. "You cannot pass," he declared. "I am a servant of the secret fire, wielder of the flame of Anor. Go back to the shadow." As the bridge cracked and the Balrog fell, it dragged Gandalf down with it. With his final breath, he cried, "Fly, you fools!" His sacrifice saved them all, and marked the beginning of his own rebirth. Saruman did not fall in an instant. He believed himself the wisest of the wise, and in his pride, he convinced himself that he could use the power of the enemy for good. At the Council of Elrond, Gandalf revealed Saruman's logic. "We can bide our time. We can keep our thoughts in our hearts. We can wield it against him." Saruman thought he could outwit darkness. Tolkien wrote in his letters that Saruman's fall was rooted in a lust for knowledge and order, divorced from love and humility. He viewed the ring not merely as a threat, but as a tool. "The time of the elves is over," he said. "Our time has come." He believed that if the ring were taken and used by one as strong and wise as himself, it could end the war and bring order to Middle-earth. But the fallen wizard misunderstood the ring. Its corruption was not only in use, but in desire. It dominated through will, and it had already begun to shape him. Even without touching it, Saruman was under its shadow, twisting his thoughts, poisoning his wisdom, turning him from guide to tyrant. What he thought was control was already servitude. Saruman thought he could outwit Sauron, defeat him not by resisting evil but by wielding it. He did not desire to destroy the ring. He desired to claim it. "We may join with that power," he told Gandalf. "It would be wise, Gandalf. There is hope that way. Its victory is at hand, and there will be rich reward for those that aided it." Yet even in that offer, he betrayed his deeper motive. Saruman was no servant. He believed he could become the new master of Middle-earth, using Sauron's tools to build his own rule. When the Nazgul began searching for the One Ring, they came first to Isengard. Saruman, already under suspicion, welcomed them, but gave them false directions. As Tolkien notes, Saruman had in fact become aware that the servants of Barad-dûr were moving, and he had received emissaries from Sauron. He told them that the ring had been carried north, and that the Shire lay beyond his lands. But his intent was not loyalty, it was delay. He hoped that by misleading the Nazgul, he could gain time to locate the ring first. This subtle moment reveals the core of Saruman's ambition. He had no intention of aiding Sauron. He wanted the ring for himself and thought to deceive both sides. He sent his agents to search the Gladden fields, and when that failed, turned his attention to the movements of the Shire. He played a dangerous game, misleading the most fearsome of Sauron's servants while racing against the free peoples to reach the same prize. Saruman's dialogues with Gandalf were never honest offers of unity. They were moves in a larger game of political deceit. When he said, "A new power is rising," he cast himself as its prophet, not Sauron's herald, but its future master. He told Gandalf, "Why not? The ruling ring? If we could command that, then the power would pass to us." His use of "we" was a lure. In truth, he meant me. Saruman's speech at Orthanc was a rehearsed manipulation. He sought to draw Gandalf into a false alliance, knowing that a union of the two greatest wizards would be feared by both sides. Yet beneath every word was self-interest. As Tolkien explained in his letters, Saruman had become the chief example of the fallen wizard, one who began with good intentions, but fell through pride and desire for power. Even as he pitched allegiance to Sauron, he kept secrets, searching for the ring behind the backs of both allies and enemies. While Sauron's gaze was fixed eastward, Saruman took direct action. He bred the Uruk-hai, stronger, crueler orcs capable of moving in daylight. Unlike the goblins of the Misty Mountains, these were soldiers born of fire and discipline. He set them loose from Isengard with a single goal: seize the ring. In the Two Towers, we learn that Saruman gave specific orders to Ugluk, their captain. "Bring them to me alive and unspoiled." He did not want the ring destroyed, he wanted it delivered. The attack at Amon Hen, where Boromir fell and Frodo fled, was not Sauron's doing. It was Saruman's hand that struck first, hoping to snatch the ring before the eye could find it. This move was not an act of war, it was a calculated heist. Saruman did not declare his betrayal openly. He acted like a rival crime lord, slipping through the shadows to steal the ultimate weapon. Perhaps the deepest irony of Saruman's fall is that he became the very thing he once stood against. He was once the head of the White Council, the one who argued for open resistance against the Shadow. Yet Saruman fell not because Sauron corrupted him, but because he tried to defeat evil with evil's tools. He used secrecy, surveillance, and fear. He spoke in riddles and shadows. He lied to allies and enemies alike. The White Wizard turned black within. In his desire to master Sauron, Saruman mirrored him. He built towers, he bred monsters. He rejected friendship, twisted nature, and tried to rule through fear. His end was not a moment of conquest, it was one of pitiful collapse. Gandalf's fall in Moria was not the end. After casting down the Balrog in the depths of the earth and climbing the endless stair to Durin's tower, he perished, only to be sent back by the Valar. As he tells Aragorn in Fangorn Forest, "I threw down my enemy, and he fell from the high place and broke the mountainside where he smote it in his ruin. Then darkness took me, but I have been sent back until my task is done." He returned as Gandalf the White, no longer merely a guide, but a force of destiny. When they meet him again, Gimli calls him Gandalf, "But you are all in white." The wizard corrects him. "Indeed, I am Saruman," one might almost say, Saruman as he should have been. His transformation is not just one of appearance, but of spirit. Gandalf now bears the full authority once held by Saruman. Wisdom without corruption, power without pride. This new authority is immediately tested. Gandalf rides to Edoras, where he confronts King Theoden, long imprisoned in despair by Wormtongue's whispers and Saruman's distant will. "Too long have you sat in the shadows," Gandalf declares, raising his staff in defiance. The spell is broken. Theoden, once hunched and silent, rises renewed, throwing off his cloak and seizing his sword once more. Hope returns to the House of Eorl. From there, Gandalf rallies the Rohirrim, urging them to muster strength against Saruman's armies. His timing proves decisive. At Helm's Deep, the defenders are nearly overwhelmed, but at sunrise on the 5th day, Gandalf arrives with Aomer and a host of riders. "Look to my coming at first light on the 5th day. At dawn, look to the east," he had said, and he keeps that promise. The riders charge down the slopes of the valley, scattering Saruman's Uruk-hai in terror. The battle is turned. His return as the White is not for dominance, but to lead with hope. Everything Saruman once aspired to be, Gandalf now becomes, proving that true power lies in service, not subjugation. After the victory at Helm's Deep, Gandalf, Theoden, Aragorn, and others ride to the foot of Orthanc. There, they find Saruman trapped in his tower, surrounded by the wreckage of his ambition. Despite his imprisonment, Saruman still attempts to bewitch them with words, descending to the rails of Orthanc. Saruman's voice is fair and persuasive. Tolkien writes that those who listened unwarily to that voice could seldom report the words that they heard, and if they did, they wondered why they had felt daunted at the time. Even now, Saruman tries to manipulate. He offers peace, blames others, and slyly mocks Theoden and Gandalf. He believes his voice, once so powerful in the Council of the Wise, can still bend wills. But Gandalf is no longer the Grey Pilgrim. He stands firm. "I am not Gandalf the Grey," he declares. "That is over. I am Gandalf the White, who has returned from death." He offers Saruman a chance, one last moment to descend and be of aid. But the fallen Istari refuses, retreating into mockery. Then Gandalf speaks with terrible finality. "I cast you from the Order and from the Council." He raised his hand and spoke slowly in a clear, cold voice. "Saruman, your staff is broken." His staff splinters in his grasp. Saruman, once the head of the White Council, is cast down. Tolkien underscores the scene's gravity by describing the moment as one of irreversible judgment. The wizard had been given many chances, but at last his fall is complete, not by force but by the weight of his own refusal to repent. Knowledge, rule, order, he believed. These were noble goals, and he was the one fit to bring them about. Yet in the pursuit of these ends, he lost sight of the humility and mercy that define true wisdom. Tolkien wrote in the Letters of Tolkien that Saruman's fall is really a moral one. It is the result of a lust for power and knowledge, the desire to become a master. He warned that the greatest evil often enters through the will to do good, when one tries to control others for their own good. Saruman believed himself the savior of Middle-earth, yet he became its tyrant. In The Two Towers, Treebeard laments, "He has a mind of metal and wheels, and he does not care for growing things." This captures the heart of Saruman's decay. He traded the living for the mechanical, the natural for the controlled. Tolkien believed that true power must be restrained by self-knowledge and compassion. Saruman possessed neither in the end. Though Saruman was cast down from Isengard, he did not vanish entirely. Under the alias Sharky, he slithered eastward and seized control of the Shire through manipulation. He twisted the land with fences and filth, enslaving hobbits and installing petty men as enforcers. The Shire, once untouched by war, became a land of grey ruin. Saruman's final bid for control was not through grand armies, but through small and petty domination, a reflection of his diminished state. When Frodo, Sam, Merry and Pippin return home, they are not the same naive hobbits who once left Bag End. They recognize the evil in their homeland and take action. Merry and Pippin rally the hobbits, leading them in what would become the Battle of Bywater, one of the most unexpected victories in all of Tolkien's legendarium. The hobbits drive out the ruffians, and the Shire is reclaimed. Saruman is dragged from Bag End, sneering and stripped of all dignity. Frodo, in an act of mercy, offers him a final chance. "No, Sam," said Frodo. "Do not kill him even now, for he has not hurt me. And in any case, I do not wish him to be slain in this evil mood. He was great once, of a noble kind that we should not dare to raise our hands against. He is fallen, and his cure is beyond us, but I would still spare him in the hope that he may find it." But Saruman, true to the pride that undid him, mocks Frodo and refuses. "You have grown, halfling," he says. "Yes, you have grown very much. You are wise and cruel." Then Wormtongue, long abused and broken by his master, snaps. He draws a knife and slays Saruman on the doorstep. It is the final betrayal, the servant turning on the master. Tolkien writes that Saruman's body shrank, and the shriveled face became rags of skin upon a hideous skull. A grey mist rises from his corpse and looks westward. But out of the west came a cold wind, and it bent away, and with a sigh dissolved into nothing. His spirit is rejected by the Valar. There is no place in Valinor for one who has willfully turned away. Thus ends the mightiest of the Istari, not in glory, but in bitterness and ruin. Tolkien said that Saruman's end reflects the fate of those who will not turn back from folly when they still can. The lesson is not only one of failure, but of refusal. The door to redemption was open to the last, but the wizard never stepped through it. Saruman's story shows that real power isn't about control, it's about helping others. Gandalf knew that. He never wanted to rule, he wanted to guide. That's what made him strong. Saruman thought knowledge and order were enough, but without kindness, they turned to pride. Their friendship ended in sorrow. Gandalf once trusted Saruman. Even after his fall, Gandalf still hoped he would change, but Saruman was too proud. In the end, Mithrandir sails west with peace in his heart. Saruman is left behind, his spirit blown away like dust. Gandalf shows us that real strength is quiet. It leads, it doesn't force. That is what makes him the White Wizard, not just in name but in spirit.